In the county of Youngwood, there was an old man named Thomas, who lived in the village of Claybrook. This village was about 5 or 6 miles from the county town. Thomas and his son ran a small roadside inn, primarily serving passing merchants and travelers. There were several carters who frequently stayed at the inn as they traveled back and forth with their goods. One evening, as the sun was setting, 4 carters arrived seeking lodging, but the inn was already full. The carters, with nowhere else to go, insisted on staying. After thinking for a moment, Thomas realized there was one place they could stay, but he worried the guests might not be satisfied with it. The carters assured him, saying, "Any small room will do, we won't be picky." It turned out that Thomas's daughter-in-law had recently passed away, and her body was still laid out in a small room, waiting for her husband to return with the coffin. Thomas led the carters through the alley to this small room. When they entered, they saw a dim oil lamp on the table, and behind the table, a shroud covered the deceased. The carters' sleeping area was a large shared bed in the small inner room. The 4 carters, exhausted from their journey, fell asleep as soon as their heads hit the pillows. However, one of them hadn't fully fallen asleep and heard a faint rustling sound from the deathbed. Startled, he opened his eyes and saw that the lamp in front of the shroud was burning brightly, illuminating everything clearly. He then saw the woman's corpse lift the blanket, get out of bed, and slowly walk into their sleeping quarters. The corpse had a pale golden face, with a piece of raw silk tied around her forehead. She walked to the bed and leaned over each man, blowing 3 breaths onto each of them. This carter was terrified, fearing that the corpse would blow on him next. He quickly covered his head with the blanket, holding his breath and staying as quiet as possible. Not long after, the corpse indeed came over to him and blew 3 breaths on him as well. The carter felt the corpse leave the room, and after hearing the rustling sound of the blanket, he peeked out to see the corpse lying back in its original position. He was so scared that he didn't dare make a sound and tried to wake the other 3 men by nudging them with his feet, but they didn't move. Desperate, he thought about fleeing and got up to grab his clothes, but then he heard the rustling sound again. The carter quickly ducked back under the blanket, feeling the corpse approach him once more and blow several more breaths on him before leaving. After a while, he heard the bed rustle again and realized that the corpse had lain down once more. He slowly reached out under the blanket to get dressed and, when he was ready, suddenly jumped up, barefoot, and ran outside. By this time, the corpse had also risen and seemed to be following him. As she stepped out of the shroud, the carter had already opened the door and ran out, with the corpse close behind. The carter ran as fast as he could down the road toward the county town, shouting for help, but no one in the village heard him. He considered knocking on Thomas's door but feared he wouldn't have time before the corpse caught up to him, so he kept running. When he reached the east outskirts of the town, he saw a temple and heard the sound of a wooden fish being struck. Desperate, he pounded on the temple door, but the monks inside, startled and suspicious, didn't open the door right away. The carter turned around to see the corpse was almost upon him, only a foot away. Terrified, he noticed a large white poplar tree nearby, about 15 feet around, and used it to shield himself. The corpse tried to grab him from the right, so he dodged left. She came from the left, and he dodged right, which only made her angrier. Both were soon covered in sweat and exhausted. Suddenly, the corpse stood still, and the carter, panting heavily, stayed hidden behind the tree. The corpse then lunged forward, stretching out her arms to grab the carter from around the tree. The carter was so frightened that he collapsed. The corpse, unable to catch him, clung to the tree and remained frozen there. The monks inside had been listening for a long time, and when they heard no more noise outside, they cautiously opened the door. They found the carter lying on the ground and, by the light of their lamp, saw that he was dead. But when they checked his pulse, they found a faint heartbeat, so they carried him into the temple. After a whole night of care, the carter finally regained consciousness. They gave him some soup and asked him what had happened. The carter told them the whole story. By this time, the temple's morning bell had rung, and dawn was breaking. The monks went outside to check near the tree and, sure enough, found a female corpse standing there, stiff and motionless. The monks were terrified and immediately reported the matter to the local magistrate. The magistrate himself came to inspect the scene. When they tried to remove the corpse's hands from the tree, they found them firmly embedded. Upon closer inspection, they saw that the corpse's fingers had dug deep into the tree, like iron hooks, with even the nails embedded in the wood. It took several men pulling with all their might to finally detach the corpse from the tree, revealing deep gouges where her nails had been. The magistrate ordered his officers to go to Thomas's inn to inquire about the situation. They found out that the female corpse had disappeared and that the other 3 carters had all died, leaving the villagers in shock. The officers explained the situation to Thomas, who then accompanied them to the temple to retrieve the corpse. The surviving carter, in tears, pleaded with the magistrate, "We set out together, 4 of us, and now I'm the only one left. How can I return home alone and expect people to believe me?" The magistrate wrote him a letter of proof and gave him some money to help him on his way.